All right, hey everybody, I'm Justin Bogard, your host for the Real Estate Note Investing Be the Bank broadcast for October 13th, 2021. We got a lot to talk about today. We're going to give you some updates on the mortgage industry as it relates to all the forbearances with COVID. We've got some updates on the reconciliation bill going through the House. They're going to be discussing and make you all aware of that. And then also one of my favorite topics to discuss with new time investors is yield versus ROI. So stay tuned. We'll see you in a minute. Hey, Richard. Good morning, or is it afternoon for you? I can never tell how many hours you are behind me.
Yeah, I'm having to look too. It's actually afternoon.
Yeah. So how have you been, Richard?
It's been great. Fall is upon us, as I'm sure it is for you. Northern California doesn't get quite as nippy as it does up there in Indiana, but nevertheless, I've got a flannel shirt on today, and glad I do.
All right. It is a dreary early evening here in Indiana. We're getting a little bit of rain where I'm at right now, so it's not too pleasant. We did have some great weather the week before with a lot of 80-degree temperatures, which is unseasonably warm for this time of year.
Well, I love this time of year. I lived in D.C. for 14 years. I grew up in Southern California, and I obviously didn't have any seasons down there. DC had lots of seasons, and I really enjoyed that. And I enjoy the little bit of seasons that we have here.
Right. And you're kind of are you in the middle of California or the northern part?
I'm north of San Francisco, so I'm about 2/3 of the way up the state. So,
okay.
It gets nippy in the wintertime. But nothing like what you have.
All right. Well, we need to get started here. We got a lot of stuff to talk about. I know you and I have been talking offline on how we're going to prepare for this. So without further ado, let's get right into it.
Let's go for it.
All right, Richard. So we got to go through our disclaimer here. So neither one of us are attorneys. We're not tax consultants, and we're not financial advisors. I think people know that by now, hopefully. And our broadcast would not be possible without some sponsorship. So my company, BrightPath Notes, there's my email address, justin@brightpathnotes.com. You can find us for your note deals. If you're looking for notes and assets out there, we are definitely someone that can provide that inventory for you. So we're happy to help you out. So reach out to me. Our real estate investment club locally here is called CIREA, Central Indiana Real Estate Investor Association. And you can reach out to the executive director at cirea.club. There's the phone number up there for you. And they're an educational club locally here. They've got a lot of investors that do a lot of different things. And they've got a lot of experts in certain areas. And they also could be people that could be boots on the ground for you. If you have properties or real estate investments here locally, it's a great organization. I'm a part of it as well. And there's a group of people within that organization that like to learn about notes. And they're probably on the video right now. Note investing training. If you're looking to get some more knowledge and get a better base level exactly of the foundation of what note investing is and what it can do for you, check out our note investing training called Constant Cash Flow. You can email us at info@brightpathnotes.com to find out more information. And we're still running a discount on that, $300 discount for that training. It's going to be about, was it, Richard, 25 plus videos that we have available. And we've got some case studies.
We're still adding to it. Yes.
Still adding. I'm sorry, Richard. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're still adding to it.
Yeah. I know we got some case studies we put up there, and we're still having some more things pop up for it. So sign up for it. What do you got to lose, right? You're just going to learn more.
That's right.
Another sponsor, our last sponsor, is the self-directed IRA custodian called New View Trust. They are a company that's based out of Florida. And if you mention this broadcast, the Real Estate Note Investing Be the Bank broadcast, they'll waive your setup fee. You can email new accounts at newviewira.com, or you can dial the number 407-708-1853. This next slide is for those of you that are in Syria locally here. I want to make sure that you follow them on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. They also have a YouTube channel that's got a ton of videos on there. It's all free. And for those of you that are Syria members, you know what to do here. You can use your smartphone, hover over that QR code, and you can it'll pop up on your screen, and it'll say, do you want to go to this website? You click on it, and you just basically add your first name, last name, and maybe your email address. I think that's all it needs. Or you can type in on your desktop or another device, http://bit.ly/Syria notes, and you can get your PHP credits. All right, Richard, as you well know, I have a podcast called The Two Wealth Show, me and my good friend Elizabeth Mayora Sickles, aka Super E. And we talk about all things real estate, how to become wealthy, and how to create wealth for yourself. We're on all the podcast directories that you can find for the audio channels, and we also record it on our YouTube channels as well. So if you go to the Bright Path Notes YouTube channel, if you're watching right now, you're already there and you're already subscribed. So you can listen to what we have to say. Got a couple good interviews coming up. I'm sorry.
I'm still trying to figure out how to be wealthy. I should watch.
Yeah, you should. You can learn a thing or two. All right. So we're going to get into today's topic. So the agenda for today is going to be going over our note basics. We typically do this. We have a lot of first-time people that don't know a lot about note investing or just kind of heard about it and are curious as to what it is. We're going to go over some of the note basics real quick for you to give you kind of the lay of the land of what we're talking about. We're going to hit the mortgage industry update as it relates to forbearances, like I mentioned at the beginning of the package. And we're also going to discuss the latest reconciliation bill. We'll get into that here in just a little bit. And then the yield versus ROI, one of our favorite topics. And we're just going to kind of beat that up and really define exactly what it is, what the differences are, and when do you use them and what do you use them for. Sound good, Richard?
Sounds good to me.
All right. Let's start off with the note basics here. So we have a buyer and a seller. We have a piece of property. A transaction is going to happen. The seller is going to sell it. The buyer is going to buy it. The seller has the deed to the property, and they're going to convey that deed just when they go to the closing, and they're going to convey it to the buyer. The buyer gives them a down payment, and they typically get a loan from a bank, and that bank creates a promissory note and mortgage. The mortgage secures the property against the debt. So the bank actually owns the paper, right? And their security is that real property. So the buyer now owns the house and they hold on to that deed right there. So we fast forward how investors kind of get into this space. We got the homeowner, they're on the deed. We've got the bank that's involved here because they are collecting the debt from the borrower. That payment's coming in once a month. And we got Mr. and Mrs. Investor here. It could be an LLC, could be a partnership, could be a trust, could be a retirement account, self-directed IRA. And those entity bodies can invest in that paper. They're simply just paying for the paper. They're not paying for the house. So now the monthly payments get diverted. Instead of going to the bank, now they're going to that investor or that investing entity body. Pretty simple, right? Sometimes it can be. All right. Let's get right into the mortgage industry update. So every time we do this broadcast, we look at a company that puts out some great reports called Black Knight Financial Data. And we just download the reports. They're all free. You can do that yourself. And I just kind of take a snapshot of what they're seeing as far as the previous month to the next month goes, as far as we've really been paying attention because of the forbearances and seeing what the data is showing and how things are tracking either in a positive or negative direction. So when we look at this graph here, Richard, we see that delinquency rates are down. So the red number down is a positive thing for us because our national delinquency rate is getting below what is even really normal for this time. In fact, Richard, it's the lowest point since the spike in early 2020.
Wow,
which is
I didn't know that.
Better sign. So if you didn't know already, foreclosures have started. The moratorium has been lifted in areas. And so, which has catapulted the prepayment rate to jump up as well. So people that have used their forbearance as long as they can, they cannot push their forbearance any further along. So they have to make a hard and fast decision if they're going to start paying, if they're going to sell the house or refinance, or they're just going to give up and have to go through foreclosure. So that's why we're seeing an uptick in prepayment rate. So here is my favorite graph because it shows a mountain and then it shows a real deep valley there. So as you can see, in the beginning of the pandemic, we jumped way up there to 7.75%. And now we've kind of inched our way back down to 4%. So we're pretty much at, we'll call it normal, maybe even below normal, Richard.
Mm-hmm.
So
This is the one I really like.
This one tells a good story.
Mm-hmm.
So Richard and I we've been looking at this graph, maybe, I can't remember how long we've been looking at this. Seems like it's well over a year. And every time we look at it, the green gets more green and the gray gets more gray, meaning it's those two pieces of the pie get larger. So out of the 7.6 million forbearances, we noticed that 3.7 million of them, or 49%, have been expired from the forbearance. They've been removed because they are reperforming. That's a positive sign. The gray part of the pie is the paid off version. That's about 22%. So they're making up about 79, almost 80% of forbearances have gone out of forbearance in a positive way. So when we first got into COVID, there was a view, and a lot of us had that view of like, this is going to be really bad. This is going to be really bad for our country. We're going to see a lot of problems here. But what I keep saying is what has saved us is this home appreciation factor that we're going to expand upon here in just a minute, of how much that has saved our mortgage industry, as far as not having a bunch of borrowers have to go through foreclosure and get removed from their houses when it's kind of out of their control, right?
Yeah, and also the lower interest rates. I mean, the fact that a lot of these people are at higher rates than they can refinance into, and their incomes have gone up. Well, not with COVID, but if you make some allowances, it's still easier for them to get into a mortgage than it was originally.
Right. So these are all good, positive signs. And by the way, if you have any feedback, if you have any requests, if you have any questions or comments you want to make, please, by all means, if you're on YouTube or Facebook, go ahead and chime in and write a comment. We will answer them. Sometimes we answer them live during our presentation part of this broadcast, and sometimes we wait till the end and have more of a longer Q&A. So if we don't answer it now, we will answer it. So please fill up. We noticed we got a couple of comments already, and so feel free to go ahead and chime in there on YouTube or Facebook and just leave your comment or your question, or if you just want to say hi, or if you want to comment on Richard's flannel shirt, go right ahead. He will not be offended.
Before you leave this slide, though, what it's sort of seeming to start to indicate, would you not agree, that we may not have the tsunami for foreclosures that we thought we were going to have? Well, still remains to be seen that we're early in the game, but this is a very interesting statistic to me.
It is, and it's only gotten better. And I do agree with what you're saying. It does not appear that there's going to be a tsunami. There are still more, I want to say about 750,000 mortgages that are getting ready to expire in October as well. And so we're going to see a trend just similar to this, to where the green's going to get a little bit bigger and the gray is going to get a little bit bigger, and the orange and the red and the blue and the dark blue are going to be squished a little bit tighter. And so that's all good things. So we're seeing a very healthy reperforming mortgage situation out of this forbearance. So this is all very good. Okay, we talked about home growth, right? And we've all heard the stories of certain cities and how much they're growing annually. And surprise, surprise, Austin, Texas had an annual growth rate of almost 46%. You imagine that? If you had property, if you knew what you knew today, Richard, and you went back in time 18 months ago and bought some property in Austin, I think you would be pretty happy right now.
I'd be very happy. And a matter of fact, I know I know a flipping company down there that's selling about 250 houses a year.
Wow.
And I think that they have probably got very, very happy buyers.
So that's the one time when you play on appreciation when it works for you.
Right. Right.
You have to be pretty lucky, and they would be pretty lucky if they fell into that. So, what surprises you up here? What cities?
I think that's the city that surprises me the most, just looking over the list, would be Pittsburgh.
Yep.
You know, I'm surprised. I mean, it is appreciated, but
Mhm.
honestly, Pittsburgh's kind of sleepy, and I'm surprised it hasn't. I'm surprised it's even done that well.
Yeah, so you can't look at these two sets of data points and say, okay, the top graph shows the highest home price growth rates, and the bottom one shows the lowest home price growth rates. But if you look at the cities in the states, it's not necessarily like heavy populated cities or not. It's a mix of some blue collar cities and some white collar ones.
Yeah. Actually, you know, would say that probably the biggest surprise for me here, and I've heard this once before, is Salt Lake. Salt
Salt Lake
Lake,
City.
Salt Lake City is just going through the roof, from what I
Hmm.
understand, in terms of just overall demands and growth, and it's a great place to invest. Um, Worth looking at.
Okay. Apologize, folks. Richard and I are both on internet connections, and sometimes our connections get a little off. And so if our audio cuts in and out, we do apologize. And we hope to the internet gods that we can make it through and you guys can hear us. So I know Richard's screen's frozen right now currently. He can probably hear us. So let's kind of move forward a little bit till he jumps in.
Oh,
So
am I
the
frozen?
next, oh, hi, Richard.
Hi.
So the next slide here is going to tie right into the home growth. We're also going to talk about affordability. And what's interesting to note is that this is the monthly principal and interest payment needed to purchase a median priced home. So whatever that number is, Richard, let's call it $300,000. Okay. So this graph is saying when using a 20% down payment and a 30-year fixed mortgage, they're trying to say, okay, in 2006, 2005, right at the end of 2005, it looks like the principal interest monthly payment needed to buy a median price home, whatever it was at that time, was $1,360. So obviously we went through a recession. We went down and dipped. And then in 2018, we come up, we come back down after 2018, and we spike back up quickly in 2020, 2021. And guess where we're at today? We're at 1297. So this graph is kind of important because it's noticing a trend here. So now let's dive a little deeper. And so now we're going to look at the ratio of the national payment to income. So the green line is going to be your 30-year fixed interest rate, which is the right axis. And the left axis is your payment to income ratio, which is the blue line coming up and down. So you notice back in the 05-06 timeframe, it was a 34%. It cost you 34% of your monthly income to pay for that median price home mortgage. That's a pretty hefty number, right, Richard?
Yeah, most banks and savings groups underwrite at I think it's 34 or 44 is the max, so that's pretty close.
Yeah. And shortly after that, we kind of know what happened. So when I think people they extended, over leveraged themselves and got extended, and the loan companies allowed that to happen. So you notice that it came back down pretty solidly because the interest rates kind of creep down, and you see that the graph is mostly proportional throughout. You follow it there, and then you see lately it's becoming disproportional. And this is just interesting to note that it's doing that. The delta is getting pretty far apart, Richard. So even though the affordability of this payment versus the median price home looks affordable, is only about 22% of your rate payment ratio, because the interest rate is so low. So now, when that interest rate changes, this is what can happen. So today's rate, we'll say it's 2.87 because that's what the last slide said. The payment to make a monthly payment on a median price home would be about $1,300, which comes out to our 21%, 22% payment ratio. So if it just goes up to a 3.5% interest rate, fixed interest rate, your payment goes up by about $100, and it creeps you up to about 23%. If it jumps up to a 4% rate, then that goes up another $200 from when it was $1,300, right? So it's almost 25%. And you can see when it jumps up to 5%, it's going to be $1,679 versus $1,300. So it jumps up quite a bit. So that's a 29% increase from where we are today, with the assumption that the rate's going to go up, because we know that the feds will eventually need to raise the rates. I'm not sure when it's going to be. I should have looked that up before we got on the call, Richard. Do you know?
Well, I think they're, as always, they've got a fine line to walk. As we can see, if they raise the rates very much, we're going to have a lot of people that aren't going to be able to refi, and that's really going to affect that part of the market. Yet, if we go into inflation, they may have to. So I don't think they even know yet.
Right. So this is kind of dangerous waters, meaning we've had a lot of great home growth and we have very low interest rates. So we'll say that the typical person is probably going to take advantage of that as best they can. They want to get the biggest house for the least amount of money that they can, and they want to stretch out that payment. So those that get in early with, a house before it appreciates too much and get the low interest rate, are coming out smelling pretty good. Those kind of later to the game are going to be getting some residual here, and they might not be so lucky, or the opportunity comes up in the future, a couple of years from now, when they want to go after a house. It might not be as affordable as what they just had. So maybe they'll have to downsize to make it more affordable, if that makes sense. So if they have a 3,000 square foot house and their payment, they're getting a 21% payment to income ratio, and they need to move somewhere, and they may be getting into a 2,200 square foot house. I mean, I think the real estate is going to start correcting itself with the home appreciation. Whether it's going to be a crash, I'm not going to say that. Whether it's going to be a slow taper down, I don't know. But I think, Richard, it's interesting to note that these graphs are kind of indicating something's going to change here.
Right. Now, the Fed usually consults you before they make a change, right?
They do. They haven't called me yet. I did get a text earlier from them.
Oh, okay. Just want to make sure.
Right. So that's what we got on the mortgage industry update. Like I said, Black Knight Financial Data. You can go to their website, look at the reports that I got, download the August report, and it's a ton more detailed than what I go into. I just kind of hit a high level on things that look interesting to me and things to point out. Richard, let's talk about the budget bill going on, and then the reconciliation bill that has to go into effect in order for them to afford to pass. Is it $3.5 trillion is the deficit they want to push it to?
Yes, and its effect on, there's a lot of effects on all of us in terms of building infrastructure, and there's a lot of good things in the bill. But one of the things they're also putting in is some restrictions on self-directed IRAs, which will only affect us in the note industry, because if you note, no pun intended, that none of the changes are being suggested to be affecting notes, but there's going to be a lot of changes here. You want to start to tell us about them?
Right. So if you don't know this name, you should know it by now. And his name is Peter Thiel. Or Till. Is it Till or Thiel?
Thiel.
Peter Thiel.
Like
co-founded PayPal.
You gotta feel it. You gotta feel it, Philly.
Gotta feel it, baby.
That's right.
Co-founded PayPal. He was the first angel investor in Facebook. So what did he do? He got a Roth IRA, put $2,000 in it.
He did that for PayPal.
And he turned this into $5 billion tax-free.
Right.
Somebody either got wind of this legally or illegally in some government, and then it kind of sparked into this, like, oh my God, we can't have this. What's going on? And so it's caused a stink. And what they want to do is they want to overcorrect something like this. Okay, this is pretty extreme, and they want to overcorrect situations like this. I don't know of anyone else that can do something to this magnitude of a growth in let's just say 20 years. But this is pretty extreme. So we're calling this the Peter Thiel case.
Yeah, which it's interesting because they're going to cause a lot of damage to a lot of us who are sort of just moms and pops and average people here, because a few people like this slip through. You
Yeah.
have to think that that's happened anyway, but really, it just seems like it's an overreaction to me.
Right. And we're going to get into some specifics here. So in our little community, there's a guy that is very well versed in the IRA rules and regulations, and he's an attorney that specializes in it. And his name is John Heyer III, I believe, but better known as John Heyer. He's got his own Facebook public account, like he's a public figure, and he has looked into this, and he's made a lot of us aware of what's going on and helped give us kind of solutions on what we can do. So from the government standpoint, we have this budget bill that comes out, gets introduced, and because there's a budget bill and the government wants to borrow more money or print more money in order to facilitate all the things they want to do, they have to have a reconciliation bill to take away things so that that makes the bill kind of offset just a little bit. Like I said, we think it's about $3.5 trillion they're asking for, and then they have to reconcile it with something else. So this reconciliation bill is, Richard, I think it's like 900 pages long. And in the 680th page, somewhere around there, they snuck in some things about the IRA that they want to abolish or nix or whatever you want to call it. So their solution now is they want to put a $10 million cap on combined retirement plans, except defined benefit plans. I'm not going to get into exactly what that is. All this information is stuff that John Heyer has put out. So I just want to make that clear. This is not my research. This is John Heyer's research, and he's very well respected in our industry. And so we take what he says very seriously.
And we should let people know that we're going to give you a link so you can go to that. And Heyer is Hyre. It's not HIRE.
Yeah, thank you for saying that.
Mm-hmm.
So those of you that are on the call right now, I am going to copy in the chat for everyone his Facebook post that has his Zoom feed, to where you can look at this video. Hopefully that link will get you straight to this video. And it's about a 45-minute video, and he goes into very clear things as to what's going on with it. So if you keep in touch with him, you'll be there.
On top
All
of
right.
it. You'll be on top of it.
We've got some more links for you, but for right now, that's a place where you can see him actually speak on it and hear what he has to say. So we're just going to give you some high level stuff. So go ahead, Richard.
No, I was just going to say just that. We're going to give you some high level information here. So go ahead.
Yeah. So that means if you're uber wealthy, there's going to be no more minimum distributions. I mean, the minimum distribution is going to be forced for them, and they reach the 10 million, and then they're not going to be allowed to contribute at the IRA level. Which, if you've got 10 million in a retirement account, I don't think you're really worried about putting away $7,000 in your retirement account annually. So that's not a big deal. So this kind of hard and fast law that they're wanting to put in place doesn't really affect us very much because most of us are not going to hit that 10 million cap. It'd be nice if we all did, but it's, we got to be real. So what really affects us, Richard, and I'll let you kind of speak to this some more, is a couple of bullet points here. So go ahead.
Well, before I do that, I will mention, and maybe it's in your slides here, it's 10 million per category. So if you have a Roth IRA for 10 million and a conventional IRA for 10 million, the total is 20. Not that most of us are at that level, but that is the overall cap. And you're right. They're not going to let you invest in investments put together by syndicators. A PPM or a crowdfunding site will no longer be something that you can invest in. And you also can't invest in anything if you have a personal property trust or something like that, where you're writing a checkbook or anything like that.
So the penalty is, in simple terms, death to the IRA. So you'll
Right.
just, whether that's you lose all the investment or whether that's, I'm assuming it's you get to pay taxes on it.
Yeah. So the cleanup period on this is 2 years. So if you are invested in any syndications or anything of that sort, you're going to have to divest yourself, which unfortunately, if this goes through, is going to cause a fire sale. I mean, I must admit, I have some very wealthy investors, and I was thinking, gosh, good chance for us to put together a pool here and call it the fire sale pool, whatever you want, but to buy up a bunch of investments that people can no longer afford to have.
Exactly. So in the chat, I'm also going to throw in another website here. So John Heyer has also created just a website dedicated to this proposed changes. And so any updates that happen, he's going to post about as well. So it's called handsoffmyira.com. I will bring it up on the banner here. So those of you that are watching a replay can see it. It's John Heyer's website, Hands Off My IRA. It's www.handsoffmyira.com. And he kind of drills down exactly what it is. What, if you want to read the exact legislation, he has it already formatted for you so you can see it. And he also has letters and templates already designed so that you can reach out to your senator and your representative, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So along with what you said, Richard, you mentioned that you're not going to be allowed to invest in some of these entities.
Right. Right. So you won't be able to own more than 10% of an LLC, trust, personal property trust, anything like that. If you're an owner or an officer of something, you won't be able to invest in that. So that affects a lot of these personal property trusts, things of that sort. As I mentioned before, no more checkbook personal property trusts where you can write checks to LLCs, which a lot of people like to use for flipping houses. They'll be doing a flip, and as they want to make their disbursements, they will pay them out of that. And no more 50-50 JVs. A lot of people invest in as money partner in a flip, and you won't be able to do that anymore.
Yeah, that's a huge thing for especially the note investing community, even the traditional real estate investing community for fix and flips. I mean, we're all looking for that person's retirement account that is just using it as a way to lend money, and
Right.
that's what makes the great partnership there. So you're going to have some changes there.
Mm-hmm.
But the good news is all this stuff, you can do something about it, right? So we're going to get to that in just a second. So Roth conversions. So you want to explain that quickly and why they're
Well,
banned for?
so yeah, what they're doing is they're anticipating the wave here. If you have a regular IRA SEP, or a 401k, you can no longer basically backdoor it or move your monies over to that. I'll use a very quick example. If you had $1,000, you wanted to move it over in your 30% tax bracket, you would have to pay the taxes as soon as you put the money into the IRA, but would no longer have to pay taxes on that. They won't be allowing you to do that anymore.
Yeah, so no more converting after tax dollars or for 401ks or Roth IRAs. So what can you do? You're gonna have to contact wherever you're at. You're gonna house a rep assigned to you in your congressional district and also a senator. And so you want to stop these sections, 138.312 and 138.314, and that takes care of the main stuff that we talked about, not the front end stuff with a $10 million cap on the IRAs. That's not what we're as concerned with, because that takes care of the Peter Thiel's types of situations. We're concerned with us and the ramifications of what it could have if you have passive investors that are looking to invest in syndications and PPMs and stuff like that. If those companies aren't able to raise capital from people's retirement accounts, that's going to be a huge problem.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna roll down the hill. It's gonna roll different ways, and if people can't raise money, okay, then they're not going to have a fund, and that fund's not going to be able to buy anything, and there's going to be inventory that's not going to be able to be sold or bought. So this is a very serious topic that we all need to take action on. So I myself have done this thing where I went to National RIA. It's a website. I don't think I have it up here, Richard. It's nationalria.org, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And they have this thing called Voter Voice. And it's something that Jeff Watson sits on the board of the National RIA. Oh, I do have it, Richard. I'll put this in the chat here. I'm also going to post it on our screen here. So what you do is you go to the website, and there's an action center, and it's their advocacy section. And it makes this really easy for you. You put in your first name, your last name, your email. The letter is already done for you. It already knows based on your address that you input your zip code exactly who your correct rep is or your senator, and it will send the letter to them. You can add to it if you want. You can change stuff, whatever you want on it, but the letter is already in a template form to where it'll just flow right there. It's very quick and easy. So if you all do it, it does make a difference. Richard, I think what Jeff told us was if they get 7, 8, 10 emails about the same thing, their ears perk up.
Right.
And they really want to hear from their constituents. They really want to hear, and these grassroots types of things we can do to help stop this legislation, it does make a difference. So we don't have to have thousands of people contact one person. We just need to contact your local person and then spread it so that they can make those decisions and stop this stuff from going through. So that the bill came up recently, Richard, I think it was 2.5 weeks ago. And I think Nancy Pelosi pulled it off the floor because there was some internal stuff going on with the Democrats. And so it's going to be that the government is funded now until December 3rd, Richard, I think it is.
Yes.
So it would make sense to me that at the end of November, it's probably going to be reintroduced again to the House to see if it can pass through.
Right.
So again, if you go to nationalria, REIA.org, and you can go to their action center, you can fill out that stuff. Now, if you go to John Heyer's website at, I'm trying to read it here, handsoffmyira.com, he does have some sort of template set up as well for a different type of letter. And he also identifies the first 8, the 8 people that are most important to contact to stop this from going through. And those are the ones that are on this committee. Richard, what's the name of the committee?
Don't know. Can't answer that one. House Ways and Means? I don't know.
Yeah. One of those committees. Anyways, yeah. They're identified in there. So we appreciate that.
Hats off to Regina. She's already gone out and cast her vote. So good for you, Regina.
You rock, Regina.
That's
oh,
right.
And she's a SIREA member too. Say hey to her. Quick hey to Kendra. Hey, how you doing? All right. So by the way, if you guys have any comments or questions or anything you want to ask, please use the comment section and for your Facebook or YouTube, and we'll be happy to answer them here at the end of this presentation. So we're through the meat of this, Richard. We're going to get into the yield versus ROI next, unless you have something you want to talk about with this reconciliation bill.
No, I think we've just about covered it. I would urge you to go to John Heyer's Facebook site. If nothing else, just go to Facebook and put in John Heyer, and all this will pop up. And it's worth watching his video to find out more about.
He's a very intelligent guy. He's very precise. He's very expensive if you hire him, but he's the best lawyer out there for the self-directed stuff. So again, John Heyer has a Facebook post of a Zoom video call he did for free that explains this in a way more detail than Richard and I can go into. John Heyer also has his own website dedicated to these proposed changes, which is handsoffmyira.com. That can give you just as much information. He does have letter templates to send to your local senator or your rep. And then if you go to nationalria.org, they do have their own version of that as well that you can send. That's pretty quick and easy. I did that one, so I know from experience how quick it was. Regina looks like she did that one as well, and so it was quick and easy for her, I'm sure, because she jumped right off and jumped right back on.
Right.
All right. The most common, not question, but pushback, Richard, that I get from not just first-time investors, but from lightly seasoned note investors is they don't understand the difference between yield and ROI. So yield, just quickly through Investopedia, I was just trying to find some language to make it more clear, is just a measure of cash flow that an investor gets on the amount invested. So we're talking about in a note, okay? A note is a fluctuating valuation. Can you elaborate on that, Richard?
Well, I mean, unless it's a fixed rate note, but obviously there are adjustable notes. But yield is usually expressed as a function of a percentage. So you're getting a 10% yield or a 3% yield or whatever. It's not a dollar amount, where your return is actually a dollar amount. And I'll let you go into the next part.
Right. So ROI, you hear that a lot. It's return on investment, not return of investment, right? If it's just return of investment, I don't think we'd be very happy. We want a return on our investment. So we not only want it back, but we want a profit on it too. So it's just a rudimentary gauge on investment's profitability. But there's only a certain time when you use this profitability. So the best example is a house flip, because it's really a fixed valuation. And it's your profit earned divided by your cost of investment. So we're going to get into some examples here. So here's Richard's house in Petaluma.
That's right.
And he purchased this. He purchased this for $100,000. We're just going to make this real simple. Okay. Yeah. And then because you live in California and everything's overinflated and appreciating at a pace that you don't understand, he sold it the next day for $150,000. All right. So now if we figure out the ROI, the return on the investment, we know that if we take $150K, we subtract it from our original investment. So Richard has a $50,000 profit. Divide that by the original $100,000 that was invested. We got a 50% ROI. It's pretty easy to calculate, right?
That's right.
Yeah. So that's just a rudimentary way of doing it. So it works well on what we'll say a fixed valuation, which a fixed valuation is like a house flip, right? Because when you buy it, you're not getting cash flow, right? You're buying it, you're putting money into it, then you have an amount that you've invested into that property. We'll just call it 100. Maybe you bought it for 80 and put 20 into it. Okay, we'll call it 100 like that. And then he resold it for 150,000. So he made a $50,000 squeeze or a profit. So it's a 50% ROI. Now, if that took Richard a couple of years to do that, then you would divide it by however many years that he did that, and then he would have an annualized ROI, which is in a percentage form as well. So that's an appropriate way to use ROI in our real estate world. What is an appropriate way to realize what the return is for a note investment that's a performing note investment is a yield calculation. So we talked about it measures cash flow. And so Richard, before I get into walking through the functions of this, I just want to touch on the fact that when I mentioned earlier about fluctuating valuation for a note, I was kind of referring to the fact that we're going to pay $100,000 for this note, Richard, and every month there's going to be some principal that's going to get deducted from that investment.
Okay, you're right.
Whether that's $10, whether that's $100, or however the amortization is working, every month the value changes. So you're paying a lot of interest in that very first payment and very little principal, right? So that's what we have to understand. The distinction is that the valuation of that note changes every month.
Right. Good point. And also what a lot of people don't realize on a note is that you're getting your return on whatever that outstanding balance is. So if you had $100,000 you're getting, let's say, a 6% return when you buy it. This doesn't happen, but if for some reason it amortized to $90,000, you'd get your 6% return on $90,000 the next month, and so forth.
Right.
A lot of people don't realize that.
So you could, if you want to complicate things, you could try to do your return on investment type of calculation, but you'd have to do it on a monthly basis. So every time there was a return of some principal, it changes what that calculation is. And then you'd have to aggregate all those hundreds of ROI calculations across an annualized basis. And so you come up with the yield. So the yield's just a quicker way to do it because we can use a special calculator. We can use an Excel spreadsheet, things like that. So let's dive into it. So when we say we're looking for the yield on the note investment, like if we originated a loan, Richard, and we originated it like it is, whatever the interest rate is our return on investment, right? It's our yield.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're talking about buying at a discount, we're not getting the interest rate number as our actual profitability number. So we have to gauge it in a yield calculation because we bought it at a discount. So in this example, Richard, this $100,000 house, we're going to say the unpaid balance was actually $110,000. And we're just going to throw out a 6% interest rate. It's pretty typical probably for around this price point. Let's just say it's $1,000 monthly payment of principal and interest combined. So the combined payment is $1,000 a month, no matter what, not taxes or insurance, it's principal and interest. And the remaining term is about 160 months. And so the formula in Excel, for those of you that are curious to know, it's called rate, R-A-T-E. So if you do the equal sign and then rate, and then you put a left parent or left parenthesis, you put in your term, and then you put a comma, whatever cell your term's in. Then you find your P&I, wherever that cell is, and you put it in the next, after the next comma. And then you want to find your note purchase rate, wherever cell that's in, which is $100,000 in this case, but it's got to be a negative value, Richard. So you have to put a minus sign in front of that. And then you close your parenthesis. Then you multiply the whole set by 12 because you want to get an annualized, because this term is broken down by month. And we know there's 12 months in a year. And that's why we got to multiply it by 12. And You come up with the formula, and your yield comes out to be about 7.6% yield at full maturity. So why did I say that? I said full maturity because that's what we expect from the investment, because that's what the terms are laid out. I'm expecting to make a 7.6% yield over 160 months because I bought this $110,000 note for $100,000. Does that make sense?
Very much so.
Okay. So what happens now in the note business, and it happens very often, is stuff pays off early, right? With this home appreciation factor that's been going on the past 18 months, people are refinancing because they're seeing lower interest rates. They got a bunch of equity in their house now that they've got, and they want to pull it out. And so people are recycling their mortgages. So the banks love this. Note investors.
And why do they like early refis?
Well, it changes the time value of money. So if I'm expecting to make 7.6% over the course of 160 payments, but what if I got all my money back, or what if I got them to pay off the loan in 60 months? So that early payoff actually netted me an 8.5% yield. So as each month goes by, the yield goes down a little bit each time. And the worst it gets is 7.6%. So it's pretty cool how when I'm expecting to make my return in 160 months, I actually make it in 60 months. That truncated my time value into that matter. So it actually raises our yield or investment profitability up quite a bit.
Right. And that's largely because you're paying more interest. The borrower is paying more interest up front than they are. So if you actually took the interest payments, so banks were counting on the fact that most people are going to refi after 7 to 10 years. And doing so, if you run the numbers, you find out that even on a 4% mortgage, their yield is up around 6 or 8%.
Yeah. So this this yield calculation can be a little complicated. So there's a calculator, Richard. Is it the 10BII? Is that the name of it?
Mm-hmm.
There's an HP12C that's kind of like you may get that in an app, or you can probably get a handheld one of those calculators. A lot of the first time investors, not first time, a lot of the seasoned investors that have been doing this for a long time, they have one of those calculators. Richard, are you pulling one up right now?
Yeah, I was gonna say you could just put it on your phone.
Yeah.
It's very, very handy. It gives you yet another use for your phone. I seem to be pretty tethered to my phone these days. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
Yeah. So again, I know the app that I bought, I think it was $9.99, and it was called 10BII. It's a financial calculator, and it not only does it do yield calculations, but does a lot of other scientific calculations too.
Right. That's the
But
one
for
I just showed
financial
you.
purposes, it's great to use for calculating yield and return, and it helps you understand your profitability. So
Right. That's the one I
hopefully that
just
made
showed you.
sense to everybody. I know we got several questions that popped up. We are going to get to them, and we're going to get through this last part, and then we're going to start some Q&A. I know you guys got a lot of good questions that are rolling in right now. So keep them coming, and we're going to answer them here really shortly. All right, Richard. So the next time that we meet is going to be November 10th. Man, can you believe it's November already?
No.
All right. So 6 to 8 p.m. our normal time, Eastern time. It's going to be live on YouTube and Facebook like we're doing right now. You can reach out to either myself or Richard anytime. My email is justin@brightpathnotes, and Richard is richard@amnotecap.com. And if any of you have a note that you want to sell, or if you want to broker a note to us, we would love that. We would love to buy that loan. And the best way for you guys to do that is to fill out a form, which, that URL is pretty long there. So let me paste this into the chat window. And if you fill out this form, just click on the link, fill out the form. This will come straight to us. We'll get the information that you have put on it, and we will underwrite that loan and get it back to you within 48 hours on what we'd pay for it. And we're definitely looking to buy loans. So if you guys are out there and you see loans for sale, especially seller finance loans, we would love to buy those. And so please take advantage and use that. We are definitely a buyer for you. So that is the end of the main part of our presentation. We're going to go ahead and flip over to our Q&A section. And also, don't forget that we do have a Facebook group. It's called the Be the Bank Real Estate Note Investing. If you look that up on Facebook, you can find us, join our group, and you can stimulate conversation in there if you have extra questions. It's also going to be broadcast. This broadcast is going to be broadcasted in that Facebook group as well, which it is right now. So Richard, sit tight. All of you watching, sit tight, and we're going to advance over to our Q&A.
Party time. We're back.
A lot of information. I hope that wasn't drinking through a fire hose like it felt like I was spitting out.
I think it's fine. It is a lot of information, but people can go back and absorb it. Regina's got several questions here. How about if we address those first? Is that okay?
Sure. Let's go ahead.
Okay. So she went on the website and actually did some of the work that we requested to do with John Hire. Thank you very much.
Yep.
She also has a few questions. She says, can you explain the payment to income ratio?
All right. So that part of the slide was Black Knight Financial Data's report that came out. And the payment to income ratio is they're basically trying to figure out what is a medium price house across the country. We'll say it's $300,000. and we'll say the average income of someone that can afford that house is going to be, let's just say, $80,000. And so they're trying to figure out what is that ratio between the payment that they make based on the interest rate, the fixed interest rate, which we're assuming was around 3%. And so that's where they came up with that number. So I know that's confusing. There's a couple of variables there, but they're trying to take the median price house with the median price income with the current interest rate and figuring out what that payment would be monthly. And then they're saying that's what the ratio is. So it doesn't work for everybody. Obviously, some people make more money, or some people have less money, or they're buying less house or more house, but they're just saying on average, this is what this trend is showing. So I hope that made it clear. Richard, expand on it if you don't think that was clear.
Well, no, I think it's clear that on sort of a national scale, which is what the chart was intended, but perhaps more specifically to her question, if you're a lender, a bank or anybody, and you're looking to the payment to income ratio, what they will do is they'll say, all right, this person, let's say, makes $1,000 a month. They don't want you to exceed on a house payment basis more than, if I remember correctly, it's 34% of your income, your gross income, to put that towards the house payment. Then there's another ratio they use, which is your entire debt. So they'll look at your car payments, maybe alimony payments, or whatever else you have to make. And if your overall debt load is more than 44%, that's the other hurdle you have to make. So that's called the debt to income ratio.
The DTI for short.
Right. So let's see, what's another question she has? As a beginner investor, if I wanted to buy a note, I just take out a loan or assume the loan from the bank, and the buyer sells it to me directly? Let's answer that part first.
Okay. So yes and no. I get what you're trying to say, but the way it came out, it didn't make sense at the end, but that's okay. So I believe what you're trying to say, and I'll paraphrase for you, Regina, is that if you want to buy a note, you can just, if you're asking, should I take out a loan to go buy that loan? You probably won't find many lenders that will give you the money to go buy a loan. This would have to be money that you would have cash in hand or in your retirement account, or if you had a financing partner, what we call private money, then that could be a way that you could get it if that's what you're asking. Yes, you can assume a loan if you are the borrower, right? You are, if Richard has a mortgage right now and I move into Richard's house and Richard just wants to walk away from it, he's like, I can't pay off the mortgage. I just need to walk away from this deal. Then I can assume the mortgage from him, so to speak, and I can just step in and be the current borrower and get the bank's permission to do so. That would be those types of terminology. So I just want to make sure that we're clear. But you can buy a loan from a bank, and they can sell it to you if they choose to, or it's from an individual like me or Richard or someone that's created a seller financing note. You can buy that. So I hope that answered your question, but I want to make sure it was phrased the right way.
There's a little bit more to her question too, which is that if you buy a note, let's say it's at 5%, you would buy it at a discount if 5% is not a high enough yield for you. So even though it says that it's paying 5% and a certain interest rate, we're buying it at a higher yield. There's an inverse relationship between price and quantity. And the way I usually explain that on a simple basis is by buying gas. If I go to a gas station and gas is $2 a gallon, then I can give them $2 and buy a gallon of gas. But if gas suddenly increases to $4 a gallon, and I give them $2, I can only buy a half gallon of gas. So there's an inverse relationship between price and yield. And yes, to answer your question, once you do buy that note or that loan, you are the bank, and they do make the payments directly to you as the note holder. Oh, wrong one. Sorry. Let's see. All right. She said, right. So, and would interest payments, et cetera, be made to me? Yes, they would be the same, because you have to remember, you can't go back and change the terms of the note. You can't change the time. You can't change how much. If you, Regina, or anybody else has a mortgage, I can't go back and say, oh, by the way, we're changing the
Yeah.
terms.
Yeah, there's a legal document that the borrower signed that says, I am borrowing this money from this lender, and these are the terms laid out, and they sign it and notarize it. And that can't change unless you, the lender, the new lender, or the original lender, if they're still being paid, they both can amend the agreement with agreed upon changes. So once you sign that mortgage or promissory note, it's locked in that way until it's either paid off or both parties agree to make those changes. I
Right.
hope that was helpful. I think Richard explained it a lot better than I did.
No. And your last question was, how did Peterfield do that? And so, since I have been an angel investor, I will explain a little bit of that. The first money that goes into a company is the highest risk money because you don't know if they're going to succeed or not. And so a lot of companies don't have a lot of overhead. They can take in investors of maybe $100,000 and get 2 years operating out of that or something like that. So $2,000 is a decent amount. But as more clients, more investors come in to that investment, and the value of the company is hopefully increasing. So what was a company that was worth $100,000 is now worth maybe $1 million. And the real pop becomes from that is when you go public, because you may have like in PayPal, they were generating a certain amount of income, and there was a certain amount of expectation on that. When they went to the market and did what was called an IPO, they went public. The company that they thought was worth, let's say, several $1 million, all of a sudden was worth $100 million. Because the public had bought it, and therefore his percentage of that increased. Now he turned around and did the exact same thing in Facebook and several other companies, and that's how he turned it 2,000 to over 5 billion.
Yeah, PayPal and Facebook are two large companies to be a part of. It's like getting hit by lightning twice, right?
Yeah, and it's interesting. So once you start swimming in those waters, and you become known as an investor, you see more and more opportunities. And so the question is more a process of sifting through what's good and what's going to hit and what's not. Was Uber going to hit? Who knew? Well, there's a lot of shopping websites that didn't make it.
Cool.
Let's see. What else do we have here for questions?
Regina said thanks. She had a follow-up one. I think we answered this, Regina, and chime in if we didn't. You were asking a new note buyer finances buying the loan. I understand it's having capital. Okay, no, you're good. Cool. Thanks, Richard, for taking care of that. Sounds like Tony had a question from before about. Well, do we have a chapter code for the national RIA? I don't know. If you're referring to the fact, if you're from the SCI-RIA group, it's not affiliated with the national RIA. It's just a chapter on its own. If that's what your question is. So I don't know for sure about the code. I would get with either contact the national RIA through the nationalria.org website, or maybe our local SCI-RIA, if you're part of that, can answer that question for you. Sorry, I don't know.
So one thing I will mention, though, again, is we're kind of lucky. The note industry is seen as sort of a sleepy little industry and not all that important. And if you've noticed, nobody's mentioned notes in all of this. So self-directed IRAs can be used for investing in notes. Nobody's going to have a problem with it. So that's a good thing.
Right. It's just being sneaky about the other things where you're trying to use your retirement account by investing into an entity. So I think that's where, like the personal property trust that we mentioned, the land trust and the LLC rental trust and the checkbook LLC, those things would be prohibited if this law got into effect.
Right. So personally, I'm
It's
from a
like Cindy
hassle
did both of them,
factor.
by the way.
Yeah. From a hassle factor, I'm very sorry to see the personal property trust go away because, in all honesty, most self-directed IR companies' staffs are not that versed on notes,
Mm-hmm.
and it can be a pain to get a deal done through a self-directed IRA.
Yeah. Yeah. Not New View Trust, though, our sponsor.
Nope.
They are well versed in notes and they're well versed in all this stuff. So they are definitely a company that you can lean on and count on as well.
Right.
So that's a lot of information today. We got a lot of good questions. If you have anything else that you guys want to bring up, please, by all means, jump on in there and we can discuss anything. It doesn't have to be from today. It can just be from, anything that has to do with notes or, like I said, Richard's flannel shirt. You can dive into that a little bit more.
Right.
But that's kind of all we have for today. So you guys got our emails, Justin at Brightpath Notes and Richard at amnotecap.com. Like I said, if you have a note that you want to sell or that you want to broker to us, we're more than happy to purchase that, and we can give you pricing for that as well.
I'll give you a better price than Justin, though.
Yeah, Richard's a little conservative, so he won't give you a good price. But, all right, Richard, you got anything else? Any closing remarks?
I think we're good. I don't see any more questions at the moment. So thank you, everybody, for participating today. Thank you, Justin, for hosting again. I always enjoy this. So I'll have to wear my flannel shirt next time.
All right. Yeah. Richard, thanks for sticking along with me. Thanks, everybody, for watching. And those of you that are watching the replay, you can reach back out to us. If none of the comments showed up that you needed to see or any links you need to go to, just reach back out to either Richard or myself. We'll be more than happy to forward them to you as well. Until November, we will see you guys later.
See you later.